Fade in. Cut to.
Exterior. Interior.
Restaurant?
Bar. Club.
Day.
Night.
Action.
Good day, everyone. The year 1991. I was around 6 years old, and I saw this movie, and it was called Hook. That's right, it was a live-action version of Peter Pan, directed by Steven Spielberg. And there were many, many great takeaways from this film, but the moment or the scene that stands the test of time was the food fight. It was when all of the Lost Boys and Peter and Rufio, when they were dining and they were breaking bread together. And that moment has made Hook, even though Steven Spielberg, the great director Steven Spielberg, has made a plethora of terrific award-winning mega blockbuster movies, it is Hook that stands the test of time and probably will rise above them all. And because Hook has one of the best fictional eating and food scenes of all of cinema, well, guess what? It's going to be talked about on Restaurant Fiction on this episode. That's right. Welcome to Restaurant Fiction. My name is Monis Rose, and we review every single fictional restaurant, bar, and club in TV and film, and just talk about the process, talk about the food, talk about life, just have a little chit chat. And today we are talking to the acclaimed, the amazing podcast consultant, the podcast entrepreneur. His name is K. Lee Marks. You see, when Restaurant Fiction was in its infancy, when even it was in its intermediacy and even at its advanced level, well, actually, I don't know if we're at our advanced level yet, but anyway, we come to K. Lee Marks. Who is K. Lee? He is an entrepreneur, he is a strategist, and he is a podcast launch coach. And when we just need to brainstorm, when we need that coach being like, okay, what is the next level? How do we level up? What is the direction we are going? We talk to K. Lee. Now, obviously, we are going to talk more about his business, the podcast farm, later in the episode. But before that, when we, even when in our awesome relationship, Kaylee and I would always talk about Hook. It has brought back so many memories to him, so many memories to us at Restaurant Fiction. And so we invited him on to talk about this cherished food fight and food dining scene. Without any further ado, here is our review of the food fight and the food dining scene from the 1991 film Hook and our awesome chit chat with K. Lee Marks. Go. Guys, without any further ado, let's dine. Let's dine. Let's go to a place. Let's go to an archipelago. Let's go to this. Some people might think it's an imagination of land. Some people might think it's a land where you can only enter to be a kid. No, the only way you can come is if you have an imagination that is so strong. So strong that you have that conviction that it is so real. And once you actually get into this land, you get to eat. You get to eat. And when you get to eat, you get to dine. And what I'm talking about is you get to dine with your fellow brethren. You know, you get to dine with your peers. You get to dine with, candelabras. And that's about it. What I mean is because when you dine, you don't eat with utensils. You eat with your hands. You eat very tribal, because with food and with your imagination, you get to play. And if you are not personally, as a former chef, as a critic, if you are not eating with your hands, if you are not feeling it, if you are not getting the senses, then you're just not dining at all. Now, don't tell any prim and proper 3 Michelin star restaurant that, but in this Neverland archipelago type of setting, there are no rules. The only rule is use that imagination, because once you use that imagination, you really get to make your
dreams into a reality when it comes to food, when it comes to the big huge turkey legs you want, when the yams, even the pies. And your pies, they can be green pies with this meringue that's red. And because there are no rules, once you stuff yourself silly, well, first and foremost is you can eat with your mouth open, you can yell across the table, insults in the most kind, respectful way, but also funny way. And then once, if the conversation is not flowing, then guess what? You can just start a food fight. And you can start a food fight that brings so much joy and just almost that freedom to do whatever you want. And really, when it comes to food and eating and the creative process, there is no better feel than using that imagination. Kay Lee, we're talking to podcast extraordinaire, consultant, part of the podcast farm, Kay Lee Marks, who has picked this film. Kay Lee, how was that review? What do you have to add? What do you have to discuss on the food scene of Hook?
That was amazing, Monis. That was fantastic. That brought me right back. Beautifully done. Yeah. What made me pick Hook? I mean, this scene, I think you asked me in a pre-interview in a call we had what food scene stuck out to me. And it literally popped into my head like lightning fast. And I thought that was interesting. And then upon watching it, I realized it's like really deep in symbology and all sorts of, there's a lot of juicy details in it. And wow, what a great intro. That was fantastic.
Excellent. So what about this scene resonates with you so much?
First of all, that colored meringue, right? I think as a kid, these dollops of this colored, foamy, sugary, creamy looking thing. And then of course they're fighting with it and it just looks delicious, right? I think that's probably what drew me to it. But beyond that, the utensils and the bowls and the cups, there's something about the scraping of this weird metal bowl. Like when I was rewatching this, it was just triggering all this nostalgic kid memory of what would be pleasant. And it was exciting and fun and imaginative. And then of course the food. So it starts off completely invisible and Robin Williams, Peter Pan, is trying to remember how to be a kid again. He's trying to digress from adulthood into being a lost boy. He's pretty bored at first. He's seeing all these kids chow down on their invisible food. And he's like, where's the real food? He's really hungry. And it was through sort of his challenge with Rufio that he was able to visualize the food.
It's not just about the food. It's not just let's get our characters to eat something. There is a huge point, a huge story beat of this scene. And exactly that, to get the Robin Williams character, Peter Pan, to get him to be Peter Pan again, to get him to have that imagination. And also it's really not only just driving his character, but also with the Rufio character, that Rufio was the leader. And it's almost like the tides are changing in terms of leadership for the Lost Boys and who the Lost Boys are really going to look up to. Is it going to be the Peter Pan or is it going to be Rufio?
Yeah, and it's interesting because Rufio, there's a couple parts. There's insulting, right? They're switching back their insults, and it's almost like a freestyle battle in a sense, but it's with insults. Rufio loses to some extent, and then Robin Williams, Peter Pan, throws some food at him, and then they eat a little while, but then Rufio's getting really angry because everyone's having so much fun. And so he actually ups the ante and it becomes a little dangerous. So one of the things that's interesting to me about a food fight is it's like a symbol for abundance, right? It's like if we have enough food to throw at each other, we have plenty. So it's a little bit of a festival of abundance. It's also pretty harmless. It's soft and squishy and tasty, so it doesn't hurt you. However, Rufio grabs a coconut, a hard brown coconut, and he takes it to the next level. It becomes a little dangerous. It's still less dangerous than, let's say, a hook, but it's dangerous nonetheless. But it actually forces Peter Pan to kind of go deeper into his past and pull out his swashbuckling sword swinging superhero. And indeed, he slices the coconut in half with the help of the other Lost Boys giving him a heads up. But it's a cool scene right there where he has to dodge the coconut.
you mentioned that's such a great point. Before the actual coconut, which you've also said, it is playful. It really is those meringues in your face. Like he wallops and it's just this colorful goo, which actually is also tasty. So you want the surprise and you want like, oh, no, you just didn't. But then it's like, hey, this is playful. It's delicious. I'm going to do it back. And we're just going to have a good time and smile.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It actually reminded me the one time I was in a proper food fight was actually in India, and they have they have many holy festivals, but one of the things they'll do on the holy festival is they make this basically it's nectar. It's like milk, honey, sugar, yogurt, water, rose scented water, and it's this nectar, and they bathe the deities or the statues, the representations of divinity. They bathe them in this nectar, and then they collect that nectar in 50-gallon drums, and you'll have thousands of pilgrims rushing the stage, and the temple priests are like scooping it out with these bowls and trying to hand it to everyone, and people start to push each other because it's like holy nectar, and it's on the ground and you're slipping. And so that's probably the closest thing to a real food fight I've ever been in.
How important is this scene to you from Hook? Because there's a lot going on in Hook. There's a lot going on. I mean, you have the Dustin Hoffman character, you have the Run Home Smee, you have a lot going on. But this is the scene. So how important is this scene to the film Hook?
The interesting thing is, and spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, I'm about to spoil something, so I'm giving you warning right now. So Rufio gets stabbed by Hook at the end. Who hasn't seen Hook by now, right? In 2021. But Rufio gets stabbed by Hook. And what he says to Peter Pan is, I just wish, what I wish? I wish that I had a dad like you. And so what that is actually showing is Rufio is partly, there's partly a threatening kind of competitive thing with being the leader of the Lost Boys, but there's also this longing in Rufio's heart for a father. You don't really know that until the end. So the fight scene is really symbolic because it is Peter Pan regressing from adulthood, or it's not really even regressing. He's actually like evolving into the next level. So he went from kid to the polar opposite of like a lawyer adult. And now it's like synthesis, antithesis. And now thesis, antithesis, synthesis. He's synthesizing the child version of himself, the adult version of himself. He's really it's the first scene he really, next to this flying scene, it's the first scene he's really stepping into Peter Pan with the sword. And then it alludes to Rufio's deeper mood and reason for being a little bit like doubtful and mistrusting, because it sounds like he didn't have a very good fatherly figure. So he's untrusting of any father-ish figure. So I think it's a really powerful scene, actually.
And even from looking from my re-watching from the Restaurant Fiction's point of view, imagination, it's not only imagination, like when to visualize it and then believe it. And really anyone can take, I think the line I might have, the line is, if you can't imagine yourself being Peter Pan, then you can't be Peter Pan. And really, much more than being a kid again, it's anything for any human being that wants to go after his or her dream of what that is, to actually believe it in your mind, because believing it in your mind is creating it. You always hear about these like Olympic gold medal athletes, or like the Michael Jordans of the world, and they're like, I'm only going to be an NBA player. Like there was no ifs, ands, or buts. And they were so strong in the conviction of their mind that it happened. And that's the line. Like it's just a lot. And that's what we got out of a rewatching. What are your thoughts on that?
That's really great, Monis. I think the scene is basically called Use Your Imagination. And what you just brought out made me think a little bit of like the life coaching model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Tony Robbins talks about it, and the life coach school. The idea is our thoughts create emotions, and the emotions are what lead to our belief about something, and that belief then seeks for confirmation bias in the world, and then that we only see what we're believing, and then that reinforces our thoughts, which continue to reinforce our emotions and our beliefs, and it's a cycle and a spiral. And so yeah, for those high performers or athletes or entrepreneurs or artists, it's like we really do have to believe it, to actually hold the pose, hold the energy of what we're trying to step into. We have to know it. Beyond belief, it's like a knowing. And I think this scene, it shows that. And it's interesting, it came out for him, for Peter Pan, sort of, he had to stand up for himself in order for his belief to really crystallize into that colorful meringue that he threw.
And by keeping it with this food, it's also saying that, and eating with your hands, there's a playfulness to it. So not to be really, really hard, like I'm going to be really, really hard, I'm thinking. It's like, be playful, have fun with it. And when you're not even trying, it'll just happen.
Yeah, it was a surprise for everyone. And it's a cool representation that it's this colorful, tasty thing. Like our imagination is this delicious meringue.
Moving on really quick, you've placed some music. You've had you are an awesome musician. And, in the past, you have actually placed music in on the Sci-Fi Network. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, we have a song in a sci-fi show called The Killjoys, and then also recently Netflix. We are in Lucifer season 6, episode 2, I believe, and another Spanish Netflix show that I'm blanking on the name right now.
And is this your band? What is your band called?
The band is my duo. We made music primarily up until 2019. Baseline Drift is the band. You can find us on Spotify and SoundCloud. But yeah, we had the privilege of working with some great artists to remix one of our songs, and that song got in this most recent Netflix show. And it's pretty exciting. It's cool to see your music on the big screen or the small screen if you're watching Netflix on a small laptop.
Excellent. Well, speaking of music, and music is very, say, important to food, to restaurants. How does going to now music? How does music make, say, a restaurant scene or a food scene more real? Like, how does music even elevate the scene?
So interestingly enough, actually, we also scored the intro for Robin Wright's short film, Dark of the Night. So Robin Wright, Princess Bride, House of Cards, many other awesome films. Her directorial debut is this short film that's been in Cannes and all sorts of film festivals, Dark of the Night. It's this cool film noir kind of mystery, very short, but we filmed we recorded and wrote the song that's played. And so the very first scene is this rainy night outside of like a 50s diner, and the music is everything. And a couple things, like one, you use music in a food scene to locate where your actor is or where the audience is listening from. So having music is a really good way to differentiate between inside and outside, because you can muffle the music and have it kind of lowered in the background and more echoey, and it's like, okay, now we're outside of the building. So I think from a editor and directorial point of view, it's a tool that helps you create spaces and different scenes and spaces within the same scene. But then beyond that, it really just sets the tone for the kind of mood of the restaurant, right? Like if you have our song was sort of this very jazzy, chill, and like relaxing, almost bossa nova song, and it's set to this very dark, black and white, rainy, kind of eerie diner scene. So creating that contrast, I heard once on a great podcast, I can't remember the name, that it's the contrast between things that, for instance, make something scary and creepy. So having a dark image with something cutesy, creepy. Having something cutesy with some dark music, creepy. right? Having something cutesy with some cute music is not as creepy. And so it's like having that contrast. And I think in this particular example, it was setting the stage for this sort of eerie, rainy, mysterious vibe.
We have worked together personally, and I love our work. And you're a consultant, a podcast consultant. What makes the podcast farm stand out?
Thank you so much for giving me some space to share this with everyone. I mean, what I do more and more, what I realize what Podcast Farm is doing is supporting creators, supporting coaches and consultants in amplifying their message through podcasting. It's an amplification engine, and there's YouTube, there's podcasting, there's social media, but one of the things that we really focus on is empowering creators to have their own sovereign platform. So when social media goes down, when the algorithm changes, you have something that you can still use to communicate with your audience. And podcasting is one of the most powerful ways to do that. It's this open audio channel that is basically unregulated, and you have unhindered access to the audience that you create. And it's really up to your imagination and your belief and what you can do. But if you mobilize a large audience behind your show, you can put out messages, you can promote people in your community, you really own something unique there, as opposed to just having an Instagram channel with lots of followers, because it's owned by Facebook, it's owned by someone else. We don't have visibility on the algorithm. Sometimes it goes down. It's just not our own. So I really help people share their voice, share their message through a podcast. And when they already have a show, I help them implement systems and strategies to grow it.
What characteristics, does either a podcast need to have or a potential host need to have to be successful in the podcast realm?
Passion. They have to have a love for what they're talking about. At the end of the day, it takes a long time to grow anything, and we have to love what we are speaking about and sharing with our audience. And I think that passion, the passion that you show when you're painting these amazing, vivid, fictional kind of collaborative scenes with these movies, it's like that passion is what it takes. And when people start a podcast just as a business scheme, trying to get sponsors off the bat, it may not be successful in the long run, because we really need to have that inner fire burning that will keep us going, even when it's hard, even when the listenership is not growing like we'd like, or we're not getting as many downloads. It is our passion for our topic that will attract audiences eventually, and will also keep us motivated to keep podcasting.
Excellent. And in this process, this creative process, how does the food and the restaurants play a part in amplifying your own creative process to do what you do well?
I have been eating out too much, to be honest. I don't know. I'd be curious your thoughts on this too. I feel like there's something different that happens when we cook our own food, and I'd be curious what you think about it. But like, if you think about it, when we chew our food, that's the beginning of digestion, because digestion is a breakdown of the food, and when it goes in our stomach, there's acids and stuff. But the teeth literally chop it up. And if you think about it, before that, what is digesting it? It's us cutting food and cooking it. We're actually pre-digesting it. And so if you think about going and eating out, it's like if you just let anyone cook for you, which I do all the time, it's like we're kind of letting other people start to digest our food for us. And I don't know, maybe you don't want that. Maybe you do. I feel that when I cook for myself, my body is happier. I feel something different in my experience eating when I cook. But I do eat out a lot. And, we all love a really good dining experience, And so I think that we are what we eat. Food is super powerful. We can't accomplish great things in the world if we're not nourished, if we're not taking care of ourselves. And I think food is one of those things that not only is it absolutely essential that we eat, but it's a community thing, just like in Hook. It's like this gathering around of the table to share in the abundance of food, to celebrate the small joys in life together. And yeah, food is amazing. I love food. I'm a foodie.
That's so cool. So if you're going to give out advice to a smart-driven, emerging podcast host, what advice would you give him or her?
It's hard to give universal advice without knowing more where they're coming from and what their goals are. So I think my advice would be get really clear on what you desperately want to achieve in the world and what challenges are holding you back. And with those two things, if you know what you desperately want to achieve and you know what's holding you back, then you can begin to build a plan. You know, I could talk to you about social media and email, marketing and micro content repurposing and how to network and cross promote your podcast and monetization strategies. I could talk about that. But the truth of the matter is none of it matters if it's not helping us get to where we want to go. So what do you want to achieve with your show and your platform? And then what is in the way?
If you were talking to the same smart-driven, emerging, podcast host, what advice would you tell him or her to ignore?
I mean, I would say ignore anything that doesn't sit right. Like follow your own heart around it. Follow what resonates, right? But anyone that is overly focused on just the monetization aspect and the sponsorship, it's not that that's wrong, but I seriously think it's going to miss the mark if it's not tied into your purpose and passion. So I would just say any advice that sells you a quick scheme, like this isn't a quick game, podcasting is not a quick game. You can do a lot, you can get a lot done in a short amount of time, but it's not get rich quick, and it's not like overnight. It's not like overnight you can just pay and have thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads. Like you have to build these relationships, build trust with your audience. But ignore anyone that says something, how you can grow really fast if you just pay and sign up for this marketing promotion channel on Instagram. Don't buy followers, don't do that stuff.
All right, where can everyone find you? Where can they hit you up? The floor is yours for shout outs. Go.
Well, thanks everyone so much for listening. I hope this was somewhat entertaining. If you want to get in touch with me and see some of the content I put out, Instagram is always good at the podcast farm. And then definitely check out the podcast Be On Air. It's on all platforms. You can even watch it on YouTube. We have world-renowned magicians and illusionists. We have authors. We have spiritual seekers, relationship coaches, business people, entrepreneurs. I'm bringing you everything from podcasting tips and advice to meditation and wellness practice, practical tips. It is a variety show with you as the listener in mind. So come check that out.
Kaylee, that was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this cherished film, not just to you, not just to us, but to many people who I have come in contact and will continue to come in contact with forever and ever. Guys, gals out there, if you want to start a podcast, if you have even an idea, if you are in the middle of your podcast, even if you have millions of followers and viewers, well, guess what? Speak to Kaylee. He is exceptional at what he does, and to get in touch with him, to book your free consultation, and just even have just to shoot the shit if you want, about podcasting, about strategy, well, go to his website. That is podcast/farm.com. That's right. It's podcast-farm.com. There you can reach him on the Facebook, on the Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. He's all out there. He is omnipresent. He is omni-channel. And he'd love to just chit chat about your awesome, amazing idea and really share your story and your idea with the rest of the world. So anyway, that is podcast-farm.com. As for us with Restaurant Fiction, well, you heard this episode, so wherever you listen to this episode, whether that be iTunes, Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, I'm not sure where we are anymore, but we're out there. I mean, just listen to them all. You can always give me a shout out. Monis at restaurantfiction.com. Love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fresh, and keep it on the flip side.
Cut to.
Restaurant?
Bar.